Hey everyone, Sarah here with sewingpartsonline.com, and this is our Elsa tutorial. Now, originally I wanted to do our whole Elsa tutorial in one really long video, but it would have been like 12 hours long. So we're going to do this in 3 parts. We're going to do part 1, which is we're going to be learning all about the pattern and special tips for cutting it, kind of breaking it down, because honestly, the pattern stinks. It's hard to decode, and it took us a while. So I'm going to save you all that trouble. Cut your time in like a third. So the pattern is really the part that you want to... Cutting the pattern is a really big focus, and it takes a lot of time to do it really well. The thing about this pattern is it has a ton of pattern pieces. Also, that gives you lots of room to mess up. So the biggest piece of advice I can give you before you even open this pattern up is make a dress form of the person that you're going to make the dress for. So for instance, that is Elena. Elena is a 4-year-old little girl, and that's who we're making our dress for. It is my friend Jess's daughter, and she's actually the one who I was teaching this to as we were filming it and trying to learn it. So this is a duct tape dress form. I know it's like lovely, but it really only took like 20 minutes to make. We stuffed it with polyfilament. We have a tutorial on how to do this on our blog. It is so easy, and it's even easier on a little kid because, you know, less body surface. They squirm a little, so try to do it fast. We have it all the way down to her hips because that's really the widest part that we want. Elsa's dress is a little form-fitting on the hips, so just go all the way down the, past the tush. I have this on like an old light stand. If you have like a Christmas tree, like a fake Christmas tree, the pole that comes with it is awesome for making a duct tape dress form stand. I broke mine, so I'm using a broken light stand and leg weights to keep it stable, which is, finally they're getting some use. This is Elena. We had to fix her with some saran wrap because we did not get enough layers on, and it totally broke in the back. So make sure you can really wrap your kit up. Here's the measurements that you want to get for your pattern. You want to get the chest measurement, which should fall kind of right at the nipple line and just go all the way around her chest. You also want to get the waist measurement, and that goes all the way around the waist. And if you're not sure where the waist is, not like little kids have curves to really tell, have them bend sideways, and that little fold that forms is the natural waist. Also, you want to get the hips, so we're going to go across the pelvic, right across those pelvic bones, and all the way around the biggest part of the tush. So that's really all that you need for the trunk. The length measurement that you want is from the waist, right? The waist, the back of the waist to the floor, and that's going to let you know how long it is. So I'm going to just put Elena back. I don't know how creepy it is to have like a duct tape child form behind me. So we did all the measurements for size 3 and 4, and this packet has all the way up to size 14. You see how much fabric it wants you to buy, although in my opinion, always go at least a half a yard extra. This bodice has sequence material. Please do not get the sequin material. It is such a pain to sew through. We bought a sparkly stretch fabric. It has some sequin, but they are spaced out and very small. The blue is a little too strong of a color, so we bought a white glitter tulle that can be sewn on top. So this way we have lots of sparkle and texture to give us that icy blue feel without having to suffer through a full-on sequin fabric. We went a little bit further and did some top stitching, but we will get to that fun stuff in the next video. We did exactly the same thing with the skirt, except the skirt fabric doesn't have those tiny sequin pieces. We still use the tulle layer to tone down that blue and again give that icy feel. You don't have to do the layers if you don't want to. It's definitely more time consuming and requires cutting doubles of the skirt and the bodice. All right, also you see here is the cape. We are making Elsa's cape detachable because we want to. Frankly, because we want to. We want it to be detachable. And this, you see like a chiffon. I'm going to go and say get a tulle, because if you buy a tulle, you can get the really super sparkly ones and you don't have to hem it. So why deal with a big hot fraying mess if you don't have to? The tulle is awesome, super sparkly. Because this sparkles and glitter it has on it, it has like a little bit of friction, so it's so easy to cut. This organza that's in the picture, not easy to cut. The only item that we got a woven for was the yoke and the sleeves. So let's dissect this pattern. We'll be making dress B, so you will only need those pattern pieces, which are pattern pieces 1 through 12 minus pattern piece 11. I took away pattern piece number 11 because it's binding to the collar, and Elsa's doesn't look like that. Elsa's is a little bit off the shoulder. So instead of putting that collar on there, we're going to take the yoke and just use our fingers to do like a tiny rolled hem and hand stitch with some metallic thread a nice little hem. It gives that sort of wide neckline look, but without it like falling off her shoulder. I'm not a huge fan of the snowflake applique. I'd rather do beading, which you do not have to do. You can do the snowflake applique if you want. You can like put some Mod Podge and glitter on there. Now the most important part of this entire process is the cutting, is laying out the pattern pieces and getting it right. That's going to take time. You want to be precise. You want to really make sure all those edges are perfect. Make sure it's on the grain. Take your time cutting it out. Pay special attention to marking the darts and the matching points. This part takes the longest, which is why we're dedicating the first part to it, because it's so crucial. Because I'm telling you, when you're making the dress and you're trying to figure out how to put the bodice onto the skirt and you're frustrated, it is such a relief to see those two notch points match up and you're like, oh, whew, all right, I'm in the right spot. I'm doing the right thing. I got this. That's why it's so important to mark those notches, and that's why it's so important to focus on this. So let's look at these layouts. You've got a layout designed for 45-inch wide fabric and 60-inch wide fabric. Basically, when you bought your fabric, was it on a short bolt or was it on a long bolt? If it's short, 45 inches. If it's long, 60 inches, give or take a few. My fabric is 60 inches wide, so I'll follow that layout. When we look at these layout diagrams, obviously we are looking at pattern numbers, but you also want to pay special attention to if the fabric is folded into 2 layers or if it's a single layer. Also, as these pattern pieces are laid out, is the pattern piece facing right sides up or is it facing down, like the ones with the dotted print? Lastly, you want to pay attention to those pattern pieces to see if they need to be cut on the fold and making sure that that fold is on grain. Like I said before, patterns are just a tool. They're a starting point. You can manipulate them as much as you want. You can really add your own personal touches in there. Now, a lot of our personal touches are going to be done after all the pieces are cut out, except for one. The one exception that we're going to make is with the pattern piece for the skirt length and the cape length. We're going to go 2 sizes up so that we can add a train later. So basically we're cutting it super long, but we're still keeping the width. So for example, when you're cutting out your skirt and cape pattern, you're still going to follow those side seams of, size 3-4 or size 5-6, whatever you're making. But instead of going across and doing the hem that's labeled for size 3-4, extend that down at least 2 sizes so that you can get it really long, because we want to add a train. So let's go over these patterns and what they all have. We're going to separate them by bodice and bodice lining, skirt and cape, yoke and sleeves. For the bodice, you need pattern pieces 1, 2, 3, and 4. You will cut out 2 sets because you need one of the sets for the lining. Number 1 is cut on the fold. If you want to do the extra tulle layer like we did, then you have to cut 3 sets total. Also, if you're doing that extra layer of tulle, you don't want to follow the grain line. Fold the fabric along a bias and then cut out all the pieces. That way you get a little extra stretch for the kid to move around. With the bodice, one of the more confusing parts I feel is that it has 2 lines that look like the cut lines, but only one of them is. When I'm looking at this McCall's pattern, I did size 3-4, but I've got 2 lines. I've got one right here that looks like 3-4, but then it just disappears. Then I've got one on top that looks like 3-4, but then it also has 5-6 by it, and it's kind of like, hey, what's going on? This 3-4 line right here, the line that disappears, is talking about when you're going to fold it under. It's a construction part. So we'll get to that later. So when you're cutting this out, don't go by that line, go by the full line. The skirt is made from pieces 5 and 6. 5 is cut on the fold, so you only need 1. 6 is the skirt back. If you're going to follow our design, you'll need to cut a second skirt pattern set from the sparkly tool. 7 and 8 are used to make the cape. 7, according to the diagram, you have to flip the pattern piece so that the wrong side is facing up when cutting the second pattern piece. 9 and 10 are the yoke, so those are basically where our shoulder seams are going to be sewn. The sleeves are cut from pattern number 12. I hope everyone was able to get their pattern pieces cut out. I'm sorry that we had to do a long pattern piece introduction, but they are really super important. Next video will be all about construction, so we're finally going to be sewing, having lots of fun doing that. It is quite a in-depth sewing experience. It takes a while. If you do everything that we do, probably 15 hours, somewhere around there. It's a good thing we got like 5 weeks until Halloween. So get yourself ready for that one. That one's going to be quite the marathon session, and I will see you next time. Bye.